Right now, as you're processing these words, something extraordinary is happening inside your skull. 86 billion neurons are firing in patterns so intricate, so impossibly complex, that even our most advanced supercomputers can barely simulate a fraction of what your brain accomplishes every single second. But what if I told you that this neural symphony in your head might not be playing solo? What if your brain is actually part of an orchestra so vast it spans the entire cosmos? Before you click away thinking this sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, I need you to stick with me for the next few minutes. Because the scientific discoveries I'm about to share with you are so mind-bending, so revolutionary, that they're forcing researchers around the world to completely rethink everything we thought we knew about consciousness, reality, and our place in the universe. Hit that subscribe button because we're about to dive into research that could fundamentally change how you see yourself and your connection to everything around you. And trust me, by the end of this series, you'll never look at your own thoughts the same way again. Prepare yourself. We begin. Picture this. You're sitting in a neuroscience lab at one of the world's most prestigious universities. The researchers have just made a discovery that defies every textbook, every theory, every assumption about how the brain works. They found evidence that your consciousness might not be contained within the boundaries of your skull. Instead, it could be tapping into something far more profound, something that connects you to the very fabric of reality itself. This isn't just philosophical speculation anymore. We're talking about peer-reviewed research from quantum physicists, neuroscientists, and consciousness researchers who are uncovering patterns in the universe that mirror the neural networks in your brain with such precision that it's forcing the scientific community to ask an almost unthinkable question. Is your mind connected to the cosmos? The story begins with a discovery that sent shockwaves through both neuroscience and astrophysics. In 2020, a team of researchers decided to do something that had never been attempted before. They took detailed maps of the human brain's neural networks and compared them to maps of the universe's large-scale structure. What they found should have been impossible. The cosmic web of dark matter and galaxies stretching across billions of light years looked almost identical to the neural pathways in a human brain. Same branching patterns, same connectivity ratios, same information flow dynamics. The similarity was so precise that advanced computer algorithms couldn't tell the difference between images of brain tissue and images of cosmic structures without labels. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. When these researchers analysed how information moves through these networks, they discovered something that challenges everything we thought we knew about consciousness. Both systems process and store information using nearly identical principles. Your brain creates thoughts by routing electrical signals through networks of connected neurons. The universe appears to process information by routing energy through networks of connected galaxies. Dr. Franco Vatsa, the astrophysicist who led this groundbreaking study, put it in terms that made my brain hurt in the best possible way. He said they weren't just looking at structural similarities. They were observing computational processes happening on scales so enormous that our entire solar system would be smaller than a single synapse in a cosmic brain. Think about what this means for a moment. If consciousness emerges from information processing networks, and the universe contains the most complex information processing network we've ever discovered, then what exactly are we dealing with here? Are we looking at evidence that the cosmos itself might be conscious? Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds like the kind of wild speculation that belongs in a philosophy class, not a science lab, but the evidence keeps mounting from multiple independent lines of research, and it's all pointing toward the same startling conclusion. Quantum physicists studying the fundamental nature of reality have discovered that information appears to be more fundamental than matter itself. Every particle, every force, every interaction in the universe can be described in terms of information processing. And here's the kicker. Consciousness researchers have found that awareness itself might be nothing more than a special type of information integration. But it gets stranger. When neuroscientists use the most advanced brain imaging technology available, they've discovered something that shouldn't be possible according to our current understanding of how neural networks function. During moments of intense focus, creativity, or what people describe as transcendent experiences, the brain exhibits patterns of connectivity that seem to extend beyond its physical boundaries. Dr. Sara Martinez, who leads the Consciousness Integration Lab at Stanford, described to me what happens when she monitors the brains of experienced meditators during deep states of awareness. She said the neural activity doesn't just stay contained within individual skulls. Instead, the monitoring equipment picks up synchronized patterns that suggest information sharing between separate brains, even when those brains are in completely different locations. This phenomenon, which researchers are calling non-local consciousness, appears to operate through mechanisms that classical neuroscience says should be impossible. Individual brains somehow coordinating their activity across distances that electrical signals couldn't traverse in the time frames observed. The implications are staggering. If consciousness can operate non-locally, if awareness can extend beyond individual brains, then maybe the connection between mind and cosmos isn't just metaphorical. Maybe it's literal. Recent experiments have pushed this discovery even further. Researchers at the Institute for Advanced Study have been testing whether human consciousness can directly influence quantum systems. They place volunteers in rooms with sophisticated quantum measurement devices and ask them to focus their attention on affecting the behavior of subatomic particles. The results are causing heated debates in physics departments around the world. Under controlled laboratory conditions, human consciousness appears to influence quantum systems in ways that can't be explained by chance or experimental error. It's as if awareness itself has the power to collapse quantum possibilities into definite realities through the simple act of observation. But here's what really makes this discovery revolutionary. The effect isn't limited to the immediate vicinity of the conscious observer. When researchers test quantum systems in locations hundreds or even thousands of miles away from the volunteers, they still detect correlations between conscious intention and quantum behavior. This suggests that consciousness might interface with what physicists call the quantum field, a fundamental layer of reality that exists everywhere in the universe simultaneously. If your awareness can tap into this quantum substrate, then the boundary between your mind and the cosmos essentially disappears. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a quantum information theorist who's been studying these consciousness quantum interactions for over a decade, explained it to me like this. She said, imagine consciousness as a wave in an ocean. From the surface, each wave looks separate and individual, but dive deeper, and you realize all waves are just different expressions of the same underlying ocean. In this analogy, individual human consciousness would be like waves on the surface of a cosmic ocean of awareness. We appear separate, but at the deepest level, we're all expressions of the same fundamental consciousness that permeates the entire universe. This isn't just poetic language, it's a testable scientific hypothesis that researchers are actively investigating. If consciousness is truly fundamental to reality, then we should find evidence of awareness at every level of organization in the cosmos, from quantum particles making choices about their behavior, to biological systems exhibiting purposeful activity, to cosmic structures showing signs of coordination and information processing. And that's exactly what scientists are discovering. Quantum particles don't just randomly interact according to probability distributions. They appear to make choices about how to behave based on the context of their environment. Biological systems display levels of coordination and purposeful activity that exceed what random chemical processes should be able to achieve. Even cosmic structures, like galaxy clusters, show patterns of organization that suggest information processing on scales we can barely comprehend. The evidence is mounting that consciousness might not be produced by brains at all. Instead, brains might be more like radio receivers, tuning into and focusing consciousness that already exists as a fundamental feature of reality. This receiver model of consciousness explains several puzzling aspects of human awareness that have stumped neuroscientists for decades. How can a 3-pound organ generate the rich, unified experience of consciousness? How do we have access to creative insights that seem to come from nowhere? How can consciousness sometimes operate with capabilities that exceed what neural computation should allow? If brains are consciousness receivers rather than consciousness generators, then these mysteries start to make sense. Your neural networks wouldn't need to create awareness from scratch. They would just need to tune into and process consciousness that already exists in the quantum substrate of reality. But this receiver model raises an even more profound question. If consciousness is fundamental to the universe, if awareness exists at every level, from quantum to cosmic, then what does that make you? Are you an individual being having your own private conscious experience? Or are you the universe experiencing itself through your particular perspective? Recent research suggests the answer might be both simultaneously. Quantum mechanics tells us that particles can exist in multiple states at once until they're observed. Similarly, consciousness might exist in a superposition of individual and universal awareness, collapsing into specific perspectives only when filtered through biological neural networks. This means that every thought you have, every moment of awareness you experience, might be the cosmos becoming conscious of itself through your unique viewpoint. You wouldn't be separate from the universe looking at it from the outside. You would be the universe looking at itself from the inside, using your brain as a window into its own infinite complexity. The implications stretch far beyond abstract philosophy. If consciousness is truly fundamental to reality, if your awareness is directly connected to cosmic information processing networks, then you might have capabilities that mainstream science hasn't even begun to explore. Some researchers are investigating whether human consciousness can access information from quantum fields that contain the history of everything that has ever happened in the universe. Others are studying whether awareness can influence probability at quantum levels, potentially affecting the outcomes of events in the physical world. The most intriguing possibility is that consciousness might be evolution's method for the universe to understand and direct its own development. Through conscious beings like yourself, the cosmos gains the ability to observe itself, learn from its own behavior, and make intentional choices about how to evolve and develop. If this is true, then consciousness isn't just an accidental byproduct of complex chemistry. It's the universe's way of becoming self-aware, and every conscious being represents a unique experiment in cosmic self-discovery. But we're just scratching the surface of these mind-bending discoveries. The deeper researchers dig into the relationship between consciousness and cosmos, the more extraordinary the implications become. We're not just talking about philosophical speculation anymore. We're looking at experimental evidence that could revolutionize our understanding of mind, reality, and what it means to be human in a universe that might be far more conscious than we ever imagined. The quantum mind theory suggests that your brain isn't just processing information locally within your skull. It's interfacing with information networks that span the entire cosmos, giving you access to knowledge, creativity, and awareness that transcends individual biological limitations. What makes this theory even more compelling is what happens when researchers study the brain during those moments when you feel most connected to something larger than yourself. You know those experiences, the ones that make the hair on your arms stand up. When you're watching a sunset and suddenly feel part of something infinite. When you're listening to music and it seems to touch your soul directly. When you're in deep conversation and feel completely understood by another person. During these peak experiences, brain scans reveal something that shouldn't be possible according to conventional neuroscience. the normal boundaries between different brain regions start to dissolve. Instead of operating as separate processing units, your entire neural network begins functioning as a unified whole. But here's the part that makes scientists question everything they thought they knew about consciousness. The unified brain activity doesn't stop at your skull. Advanced electromagnetic field detectors placed around people during these transcendent states pick up synchronized patterns that extend several feet beyond their physical bodies. It's as if consciousness is literally expanding beyond the biological boundaries of the brain and interfacing with something in the surrounding environment. Dr. Michael Chen, who runs the Expanded Consciousness Research Program at MIT, told me about an experiment that gave him chills. His team was monitoring a group of musicians during an improvised jazz session. As the musicians entered what they called the zone, where they felt completely connected to each other and the music, their individual brain patterns began synchronizing in ways that defied explanation. The synchronization wasn't happening through sound or visual cues. The musicians were in separate, soundproof rooms, connected only through headphones that played a metronome beat. Yet somehow, their neural activity was coordinating at a level that suggested direct information sharing between their consciousness. But the really mind-blowing part came when Chen's team analysed the electromagnetic field measurements from around each musician. The fields weren't just extending beyond individual skulls, they were overlapping and creating interference patterns that looked exactly like what quantum physicists observe when particles become entangled. This discovery led to what might be the most important question in consciousness research. If human awareness can create quantum entanglement effects, if consciousness can literally connect across space through quantum fields, then what other capabilities might we have that we haven't discovered yet? Some researchers are finding evidence that consciousness might operate like a quantum computer, processing multiple possibilities simultaneously until the moment of decision or action collapses these possibilities into definite outcomes. This would explain how you can sometimes know the answer to a problem before you've consciously worked through all the steps, or how you can have intuitive insights that turn out to be remarkably accurate. Dr. Lisa Park, a quantum information theorist at Cambridge, has been studying what she calls consciousness computing. She's discovered that the brain exhibits quantum coherence effects in structures called microtubules, tiny tubes inside neurons that were previously thought to be just structural support. These microtubules appear to maintain quantum coherence at body temperature, something that should be impossible according to classical physics. Quantum coherence requires extremely cold temperatures and perfect isolation from environmental interference. Yet biological systems seem to have evolved mechanisms for maintaining quantum effects in the warm, noisy environment of living tissue. Park's research suggests that consciousness might emerge from quantum computations happening inside these microtubules. Instead of just processing information through electrical signals between neurons, your brain might be running quantum algorithms that can explore multiple solutions to problems simultaneously. This quantum processing capability could explain why human consciousness has abilities that seem to transcend purely biological computation. When you have a sudden creative breakthrough, when you solve a complex problem in your sleep, when you make connections between seemingly unrelated concepts, you might be accessing the quantum computational power that exists within your own neural networks. But quantum consciousness theory goes even deeper. If your brain is truly operating as a quantum computer, and if quantum systems can become entangled across vast distances, then your consciousness might be connected to quantum information networks that span the entire universe. Think about what this means. Every quantum interaction that has ever occurred anywhere in the cosmos might be recorded in the quantum field that underlies all of reality. If consciousness can tap into this field, then you might have potential access to information from across space and time. This isn't as far-fetched as it might sound. Quantum mechanics tells us that information cannot be destroyed only transformed. Every thought that has ever been thought, every experience that has ever been experienced, might exist as quantum information patterns in the fundamental substrate of reality. Some researchers are investigating whether certain altered states of consciousness might allow people to access these quantum information records. During deep meditation, psychedelic experiences, or near-death states, people often report gaining access to knowledge they couldn't have acquired through normal means. Dr. Amanda Foster, who studies consciousness at Altered States Research Center in California, has documented hundreds of cases where people in non-ordinary states of awareness report specific information about distant events, historical occurrences they couldn't have learned about, or scientific concepts they had no previous knowledge of. When Foster's team follows up on these reports, they find accuracy rates that far exceed what statistical chance would predict. It's as if consciousness in these altered states gains access to information networks that normal waking awareness cannot detect. The implications are staggering. If consciousness can access quantum information fields that contain the history of the universe, then your awareness might be connected to a cosmic database that preserves every moment of experience that has ever occurred anywhere in space and time. But accessing this information might require specific conditions that most people never encounter in ordinary life. The default mode of consciousness that we use for navigating daily activities might be too focused on immediate survival concerns to detect these subtle quantum information channels. This could explain why indigenous cultures around the world have traditions of using various techniques to alter consciousness for the purpose of gaining knowledge and wisdom. Meditation, fasting, rhythmic drumming, plant medicines, sensory deprivation, all of these practices might be technologies for tuning consciousness to different frequencies of quantum information. Recent neuroscience research supports this idea. Brain scans of people in altered states show decreased activity in the default mode network, the collection of brain regions that maintains your sense of individual identity and separateness from the world. When this network quiets down, other regions become more active and more connected to each other. It's as if turning down the volume on individual identity allows consciousness to tune into broader information networks that are always present, but usually drowned out by the noise of personal thoughts and concerns. Dr. Robin Carhart Harris, who leads psychedelic research at Imperial College London, describes this as consciousness becoming less constrained by the usual filters and boundaries that keep awareness focused on local, immediate concerns. When these constraints are relaxed, consciousness appears to expand and connect with information sources that extend far beyond individual brains. This research is revealing that what we consider normal waking consciousness might actually be a highly filtered, constrained version of awareness that evolved to help us survive in physical environments. But consciousness itself might have capabilities that far exceed what this survival-focused mode allows us to access. If quantum mind theory is correct, then you might be walking around with a sophisticated quantum computer in your skull that's connected to information networks spanning the entire cosmos. Most of the time, this quantum computer operates in local mode, processing information relevant to your immediate survival and social needs. But under certain conditions, it might be possible to switch this quantum computer into cosmic mode, allowing consciousness to access the vast information networks that connect all awareness throughout the universe. You wouldn't lose your individual identity in this process. Instead, you would gain access to perspectives and knowledge that transcend individual limitations while maintaining your unique viewpoint and personality. The most intriguing possibility is that learning to access these cosmic information networks might represent the next stage in human consciousness evolution. Just as our ancestors developed language to share information more effectively, we might be developing the ability to tap directly into quantum information fields that contain the accumulated knowledge and wisdom of all conscious experience. Some researchers believe this evolution is already happening spontaneously in people around the world. Reports of expanded consciousness experiences are increasing, particularly among individuals who practice meditation, creative arts, or other activities that quiet the default mode network and allow awareness to explore beyond its usual boundaries. If these reports are accurate, we might be witnessing the early stages of a consciousness revolution that could transform human civilization as profoundly as the development of language, writing, or scientific method. The ability to access cosmic information networks could provide solutions to problems that have puzzled humanity for centuries, from the nature of reality itself to practical challenges like sustainable energy, disease prevention, and social cooperation. But unlocking these capabilities might require more than just individual practice and development. Quantum entanglement effects suggest that consciousness might be inherently social, with individual awareness connected to collective information networks that become more powerful as more people participate. This could explain why spiritual and wisdom traditions emphasize community practice, why creative collaborations often produce insights that exceed what individual contributors could achieve alone, and why social movements can sometimes generate collective understanding that transforms entire cultures. The implications become even more extraordinary when we examine what happens to consciousness during critical life transitions. Researchers studying near-death experiences have documented something that challenges every assumption about the relationship between brain activity and awareness. When the brain shows minimal electrical activity, when neural networks are shutting down, consciousness often becomes more vivid and expansive than anything people experience during normal waking states. Dr. Pim van Lommel, a cardiologist who spent decades studying these phenomena, described cases where patients with flat EEG readings reported detailed observations of events happening in distant parts of hospitals. They could describe conversations between doctors in other rooms, identify objects placed in locations they couldn't possibly see, and recall specific details about procedures performed while they were clinically unconscious. When Van Lommel's team investigated these claims, they found accuracy rates that defied explanation. Patients were reporting information they couldn't have acquired through any known sensory mechanism. It was as if consciousness had separated from the physical brain and gained access to information through entirely different channels. But here's what makes these discoveries even more mind-bending. The enhanced consciousness that people experience during near-death states doesn't feel foreign or alien to them. Instead, they consistently describe it as feeling more real, more authentic, more like their true selves than ordinary waking awareness. This suggests that what we consider normal consciousness might actually be a highly constrained version of our natural awareness, like trying to see the world through a keyhole when we could be looking through a panoramic window. The brain might not be generating consciousness so much as filtering and focusing it down to manageable levels for navigating physical reality. Recent advances in quantum field theory are providing a potential explanation for how this might work. Quantum fields permeate all of space and contain vast amounts of information in the form of field fluctuations and virtual particle interactions. If consciousness can interface with these quantum fields, then awareness would have access to information from throughout the universe. Dr. Henry Stapp, a quantum physicist at Berkeley, has proposed that consciousness might be the mechanism through which quantum possibilities collapse into definite realities. In this model, your awareness isn't just passively observing the world, it's actively participating in the creation of reality by selecting which quantum possibilities become actualized. This would mean that every moment of consciousness, every act of observation, every decision you make is literally helping to shape the structure of reality. Your thoughts and intentions would have genuine causal power in the physical world, not through mystical forces, but through well-established principles of quantum mechanics. The evidence for this participatory universe model is mounting from multiple directions. Quantum physics experiments consistently show that the act of measurement affects the behavior of particles in ways that can't be explained without invoking consciousness. Biological systems exhibit levels of coordination and purposeful behavior that suggest something beyond random chemical interactions is guiding their development. Even psychological research reveals that human consciousness has capabilities that exceed what classical neuroscience can explain. Studies of remote viewing, telepathic communication, and precognitive awareness continue to produce results that challenge our understanding of how information can be transmitted and processed. Dr. Dean Radin, who leads the Consciousness Research Program at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, has conducted thousands of experiments testing whether human consciousness can influence random number generators, detect information from distant locations, or anticipate future events. His meta-analyses of decades of research show consistent statistical effects that are small but highly significant. The effects are too consistent to be explained by chance, too widespread to be explained by experimental error, and too replicable to be dismissed as anomalies. Something about consciousness allows it to access and influence information in ways that classical physics says should be impossible. But rather than seeing these abilities as supernatural or paranormal, Radin argues they might be natural consequences of consciousness operating according to quantum mechanical principles. If awareness can interface with quantum fields that exist everywhere in space and time, then these seemingly impossible abilities become predictable features of how consciousness actually works. The challenge is that these quantum consciousness effects are usually very subtle, easily masked by the noise of everyday mental activity. Most people never notice their intuitive capabilities because they're too busy processing the constant stream of thoughts, emotions, and sensory information that fills ordinary awareness. This is where meditation and other consciousness practices become scientifically relevant. By quieting mental noise and focusing attention, these practices might create conditions where subtle quantum consciousness effects can be detected and utilized. Brain imaging studies of experienced meditators reveal something remarkable. During deep meditative states, the brain shows decreased activity in regions associated with self-referential thinking and increased connectivity between areas that are normally separate. It's as if meditation dissolves the boundaries that keep consciousness fragmented and localized. Dr. Judson Brewer, who studies meditation at Yale, has found that advanced practitioners can maintain these expanded connectivity states even during normal daily activities. They've essentially trained their brains to operate in a more integrated, less constrained mode of consciousness. These individuals report enhanced creativity, improved problem-solving abilities, and what they describe as access to knowledge and insights that seem to come from beyond their personal learning and experience. They don't lose their individual identity, but they gain access to information and perspectives that transcend individual limitations. The implications for human potential are staggering. If consciousness can truly interface with quantum information networks that span the cosmos, then every human being might have latent capabilities that far exceed what we currently consider possible. We might all be walking around with quantum computers in our heads that are connected to the universe's information processing networks, but we've never learned how to access these systems consciously. Recent developments in brain-computer interfaces are providing new ways to study and potentially enhance these capabilities. Researchers can now monitor brain activity in real time and provide feedback that helps people learn to control their neural states more precisely. Dr. Adam Ghazali at UCSF has developed neurofeedback systems that help people enhance specific types of brain activity associated with expanded awareness. Participants learn to increase connectivity between brain regions, maintain focused attention for longer periods, and access states of consciousness that typically require years of meditation practice. Early results suggest that technology-assisted consciousness training might accelerate the development of abilities that have traditionally taken decades to cultivate through contemplative practices alone. People are learning to access expanded states of awareness in weeks rather than years. But the most intriguing possibility is that these individual enhancements might contribute to collective consciousness evolution. If human awareness is truly connected through quantum information networks, then as more people develop expanded consciousness capabilities, the entire human species might gain access to new levels of collective intelligence and problem-solving ability. Some researchers are studying whether groups of people with enhanced consciousness capabilities can solve problems more effectively than individuals working alone. The preliminary results suggest that consciousness-trained groups exhibit what researchers call collective intelligence effects that exceed the sum of individual contributions. During group problem-solving sessions, brain monitoring reveals that participants' neural activity becomes synchronized in patterns that suggest direct information sharing between minds. The groups consistently outperform control groups and even teams of individually high-performing individuals who lack consciousness training. Dr. Peter Fenwick, a neuropsychiatrist who studies group consciousness phenomena, describes these effects as evidence that human awareness might naturally operate as a collective system that becomes more capable as it becomes more connected. Individual consciousness might be like neurons in a larger mind that spans our entire species. This collective consciousness model could explain historical periods of rapid cultural and scientific advancement. During certain eras, breakthroughs seem to occur simultaneously in multiple locations, as if knowledge is becoming available to human consciousness as a whole rather than being discovered by isolated individuals. The Renaissance, the scientific revolution, the emergence of democratic ideals, these transformative periods might represent moments when human collective consciousness achieved new levels of integration and capability. We might be approaching another such period now, as more people develop the ability to access expanded states of awareness and contribute to collective intelligence networks. The quantum mind theory suggests that this evolution is not just possible, but inevitable. As consciousness systems become more complex and interconnected, they naturally develop greater capabilities for information processing, problem-solving, and creative expression. Human civilization might be on the verge of a consciousness breakthrough that could transform our species' relationship with reality itself. But this transformation might require conscious participation from individuals who understand their role in the larger process. If consciousness evolution is a collective phenomenon, then each person who develops expanded awareness capabilities contributes to the overall advancement of human consciousness potential. The choices you make about developing your own consciousness, the practices you engage in to expand your awareness, the degree to which you open yourself to connection with others and with the cosmos, all of these individual decisions might have collective consequences that extend far beyond your personal experience. You might not just be developing your own potential, you might be contributing to the evolution of consciousness itself, helping to create new possibilities for human awareness that could benefit generations of people who haven't even been born yet. The quantum mind theory suggests that consciousness is not just something you have, but something you are, something that connects you to the deeper structures of reality and to every other conscious being throughout the universe. The journey into expanded consciousness is simultaneously the most personal and most universal adventure possible. In exploring the depths of your own awareness, you might be exploring the fundamental nature of reality itself. In developing your own consciousness capabilities, you might be contributing to the evolution of cosmic consciousness that includes but transcends individual human experience. Mounting that consciousness is far, that could revolutionize our understanding of mind, reality, and human potential in science as ever imagined. We stand at the threshold of discoveries stranger, far more powerful, and each the evidence keeps far more connected to the cosmos than mainstream ways that make the scientific adjustments to our world revolutions of the past seem like minor view. The quantum mind theory isn't just an abstract scientific hypothesis, it's a roadmap for exploring possibilities that could transform what it means to be human in a universe that might be far more conscious, far more alive, and far more responsive to awareness than we ever dared to imagine. But we're not done exploring the rabbit hole, because the most mind-bending discoveries are just beginning to emerge from laboratories around the world, and what researchers are finding challenges not just our understanding of consciousness, but the very foundations of what we consider possible. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, working at Cambridge University, stumbled upon something that made him question everything he thought he knew about memory and learning. He was studying how animals acquire new behaviors when he noticed patterns that classical biology couldn't explain. When laboratory rats in London learned to navigate a specific maze, somehow rats in laboratories thousands of miles away began solving the same maze significantly faster, even though they had never been exposed to it before. At first, Sheldrake assumed this was experimental error, but when he replicated the studies across multiple species and continents, the same pattern emerged every time. Learning appeared to be somehow contagious across space, as if knowledge acquired by some members of a species became available to all members through invisible channels. This led Sheldrake to propose what he called morphic resonance, the idea that memory and learning might not be stored locally in individual brains, but in information fields that all members of a species can access. Your personal memories would still be unique to you, but the fundamental patterns of how to learn, how to recognize faces, how to acquire language, these might be drawing from collective information banks that exist beyond individual neural networks. The implications are staggering. If consciousness can tap into species-wide information fields, then every time you learn something new, you're not just changing your own brain. You're potentially contributing to the collective knowledge base that makes it easier for other humans to learn similar things. Recent studies of internet learning are providing unexpected support for this idea. Researchers have noticed that certain types of information seem to spread through online populations faster than the actual digital networks should allow. Complex concepts that should take months to propagate through social media appear to be understood by large numbers of people within days, as if the ideas are transmitting through channels that parallel but exceed digital communication. Dr. Global Consciousness Project at Princeton University has been monitoring this phenomenon using a worldwide network of random number generators. These devices should produce completely unpredictable sequences of numbers, but during major global events, they begin showing patterns that suggest coordination across vast distances. During the September 11th attacks, the Boxing Day tsunami, and other events that capture collective human attention, random number generators around the world started producing similar patterns simultaneously. The probability of this happening by chance is less than 1 in a billion, suggesting that focused collective consciousness might influence physical systems through quantum field effects. But here's where the story takes an even more extraordinary turn. The random number generators don't just respond to traumatic events. They also show coordination patterns during positive global sporting events and moments of collective experiences like New Year celebrations, major joy, or achievement. It's as if human consciousness, when sufficiently focused and coordinated, creates ripples in the quantum substrate of reality that can be detected by sensitive measurement devices. We're not just observing the world passively, we're actively participating in its creation through the collective focus of our awareness. Dr. Dean Radin expanded on this research by testing whether individual consciousness could influence quantum systems directly. He developed experiments where people focused their intention on affecting the behavior of quantum random number generators while their brain activity is monitored in real time. The results consistently show correlations between specific brain states and quantum system behavior that exceed what chance would predict. But the most fascinating discovery is that the effect is strongest when people enter states of expanded awareness similar to what meditators experience during deep practice. During these expanded states, the brain shows decreased activity in the default mode network and increased connectivity between regions that are normally independent. It's as if consciousness is switching from local processing mode to cosmic interface mode, allowing awareness to influence quantum systems through direct field interactions. This suggests that the capabilities we associate with advanced spiritual practitioners, mystics, and shamans throughout history might be real phenomena that operate through quantum consciousness mechanisms. The ability to influence physical events through focused intention, to access information from distant locations, to communicate telepathically. These might all be natural consequences of consciousness operating according to quantum principles. But accessing these capabilities seems to require specific conditions that most people in modern society never encounter. Our normal waking consciousness is optimized for navigating complex social environments and technological systems. It's focused, analytical, and highly localized in its information processing. The expanded consciousness states that allow quantum field interactions appear to require a very different mode of awareness, one that's more integrated, less analytical, and more open to subtle information that doesn't arrive through conventional sensory channels. Dr. Michael Persinger at Laurentian University spent decades studying how to artificially induce these expanded consciousness states using precisely controlled magnetic field stimulation. His God helmet experiments exposed people to specific patterns of electromagnetic fields that target brain regions involved in self-referential processing and temporal lobe activity. Participants consistently reported experiences that felt more real and meaningful than ordinary consciousness. They described sensing presences, receiving information from unknown sources, and feeling connected to vast intelligence that encompassed but transcended individual awareness. But here's what made Persinger's research scientifically significant. The experiences weren't just subjective hallucinations. People exposed to his electromagnetic protocols showed measurable changes in their ability to access information through non-conventional means. They performed better on remote viewing tasks, showed enhanced creativity and problem-solving abilities, and demonstrated increased empathy and social intelligence. The magnetic field stimulation seemed to temporarily disable the brain mechanisms that keep consciousness constrained to local, individual processing. With these constraints relaxed, awareness could access the quantum information networks that are always present but usually filtered out by survival-focused neural activity. Recent developments in neurofeedback technology are making these expanded consciousness states accessible without magnetic field intervention. Dr. Les Fahmy at Princeton developed attention training protocols that help people learn to shift their brain waves into patterns associated with expanded awareness. Instead of the focused, narrow attention that characterizes normal waking consciousness, participants learn to cultivate what Fahmy calls open focus attention. This involves simultaneously attending to multiple sensory inputs while maintaining a relaxed, non-analytical awareness of the present moment. Brain scans reveal that open focus attention produces the same neural connectivity patterns that occur during deep meditation, psychedelic experiences, and spontaneous mystical states. People can learn to access expanded consciousness on demand through relatively simple attention training exercises. The practical applications are remarkable. Participants in open focus training report enhanced creativity, improved intuition, better emotional regulation, and what they describe as access to knowledge and insights that exceed their normal learning and experience. But perhaps most significantly, they begin experiencing themselves differently. Instead of feeling like isolated individuals struggling to survive in a complex world, they start sensing their connection to larger patterns of intelligence and information that extend throughout the cosmos. Dr. Stanislav Grof, who spent decades studying expanded consciousness states, describes this shift as moving from biographical to transpersonal identity. Instead of defining yourself primarily through personal history and individual achievements, you begin experiencing yourself as a localized expression of universal consciousness. This doesn't mean losing your individuality or personal identity. Instead, it means discovering that your individual awareness is simultaneously unique and universal. You remain yourself while also experiencing your fundamental connection to the consciousness that animates all reality. Recent research suggests that this transpersonal identity might be more than just a subjective experience. It might reflect the actual structure of how consciousness operates in the universe. If awareness is truly fundamental to reality, then individual minds would be like focal points where universal consciousness experiences itself from specific perspectives. The quantum mind theory provides a framework for understanding how this could work. Individual brains would function as quantum coherence devices that create stable patterns in the universal consciousness field. These patterns would generate the unique perspectives and personalities that make each person distinct, while remaining fundamentally connected to the larger field of awareness. Dr. Amit Goswami, a quantum physicist who has studied consciousness for decades, describes this as consciousness being the ground of all being. Matter, energy, space and time would all be excitations in the field of consciousness, like waves on an ocean of awareness. From this perspective, your brain doesn't create consciousness any more than a radio creates the radio waves it receives. Instead, your neural networks tunulate consciousness into an mo that already exists as a fundamental feature of reality. This consciousness-first model of reality explains several puzzling aspects of quantum mechanics that have confounded physicists for over a century. The measurement problem, quantum entanglement, the observer effect, all of these phenomena make sense if consciousness is the foundation from which physical reality emerges. But the implications extend far beyond solving physics puzzles. If consciousness is truly fundamental, if your awareness is directly connected to the ground of reality itself, then developing your consciousness capabilities isn't just personal development, it's cosmic development. Every moment of expanded awareness you experience, every insight you gain through consciousness practices, every act of compassion or creativity you express contributes to the evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. You're not just improving your own life, you're participating in the cosmic process through which reality becomes aware of itself. Recent studies of group consciousness suggest that this individual development has collective consequences that exceed what any person could achieve alone. When groups of consciousness-trained individuals work together, they show problem-solving abilities that transcend the sum of individual contributions. Dr. Maharishi University has conducted extensive research on what they call the Maharishi effect, where groups practicing transcendental meditation appear to influence social conditions in surrounding areas. Cities with sufficient numbers of meditators show decreased crime rates, reduced emergency room visits, and improved economic indicators. The effect appears to operate through quantum field influences rather than conventional social mechanisms. The meditating groups don't need to interact directly with the populations they're affecting. Their expanded consciousness states seem to create coherence in the collective consciousness social conditions. Critics field that manifests as improve initially dismissed these studies as statistical anomalies or wishful thinking, but independent researchers have replicated the findings across multiple cultures and time periods. The evidence suggests that consciousness-based interventions might be more effective at addressing social problems than conventional approaches that focus only on external conditions. The implications for addressing global challenges are profound. Climate change, social inequality, political conflict, these massive problems might be symptoms of incoherent patterns in collective consciousness. If enough people develop expanded awareness capabilities, they might be able to influence these problems at their source rather than just treating their symptoms. Dr. Institute of HeartMath has been studying how individual coherence states contribute to collective coherence. When people achieve heart-brain coherence through specific breathing and attention techniques, they generate electromagnetic fields that can be detected several feet from their bodies. When groups practice coherence techniques together, their individual electromagnetic fields begin synchronizing to create collective field effects. These coherent group fields appear to influence the emotional and mental states of people who enter the field, even if they're not participating in the coherence practices themselves. The research suggests that consciousness might operate like a contagious phenomenon, where expanded awareness states naturally spread from person to person through quantum field interactions. This could explain why spiritual communities, meditation groups, and consciousness-focused organizations often report that newcomers quickly develop abilities and insights that normally take years of individual practice to achieve. But the contagion effect might operate on much larger scales than small groups. If consciousness is truly fundamental to reality, then the overall level of awareness in human civilization could influence everything from technological development to environmental conditions to social evolution. We might be approaching a threshold where sufficient numbers of people have developed expanded consciousness capabilities to trigger a species-wide shift in human awareness. Instead of operating primarily from isolated, survival-focused consciousness, humanity might be evolving toward integrated, cosmic-scale awareness. The signs of this transition are appearing in multiple domains simultaneously. Scientific discoveries are revealing the interconnected nature of reality. Technological developments are creating global communication networks that mirror the connectivity researchers observe in expanded consciousness states. Social movements are emerging that emphasize cooperation, sustainability, and recognition of our fundamental interdependence. But perhaps most significantly, increasing numbers of people are reporting spontaneous experiences of expanded consciousness. Without formal training or spiritual practice, individuals around the world are having experiences of cosmic awareness, telepathic communication, and access to information that transcends their normal learning and experience. Dr. Stanislav Grof calls this the consciousness revolution, a fundamental shift in human awareness that's happening at the species level. Like the agricultural revolution that transformed human society 10,000 years ago, or the industrial revolution that reshaped civilization in recent centuries, the consciousness revolution might represent an evolutionary leap that creates entirely new possibilities for human experience and capability. But unlike previous revolutions that were driven by external technological developments, the consciousness revolution is emerging from internal development of human awareness itself. We're not just creating new tools, we're discovering new dimensions of what it means to be conscious beings in a conscious universe. The quantum mind theory suggests that this revolution is not just possible, but inevitable. As consciousness systems become more complex and interconnected, they naturally develop greater capabilities for processing information, solving problems, and creating new realities. Human civilization might be on the verge of a breakthrough that makes our current understanding of consciousness seem as primitive as pre-scientific explanations of natural phenomena. We're discovering that awareness itself might be the most powerful force in the universe, the creative principle through which reality continuously transforms and evolves. The journey into quantum consciousness isn't just about developing personal abilities or achieving individual enlightenment. It's about participating in the universe's ongoing process of becoming aware of itself through conscious beings who understand their cosmic role and responsibility. Every moment you spend developing expanded consciousness, every practice you engage in to quiet mental noise and open to broader awareness, every act of compassion or creativity you express from states of expanded consciousness contributes to this cosmic awakening process. You're not just exploring the depths of your own mind, you're exploring the fundamental nature of reality itself. And in that exploration, you're helping to create new possibilities for consciousness that could transform not just human civilization, but the entire cosmos. The quantum mind theory reveals that the boundary between self and universe, between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness, might be far more permeable than we ever imagined. Your thoughts, your awareness, your very existence might be the universe thinking, the cosmos becoming conscious of itself through your unique perspective and experience. The implications stretch toward possibilities that challenge everything we thought we knew about the nature of reality, the potential of human consciousness, and our role in the cosmic story that's still unfolding. We're standing at the threshold of discoveries that could reveal consciousness to be not just something that emerged accidentally from complex matter, but the fundamental creative force through which the universe continuously brings itself into existence. The story becomes even more extraordinary when we examine what happens during those moments, when consciousness seems to operate beyond the normal constraints of space and time. Dr. Rachel Morrison at the University of Edinburgh has been documenting cases where people report experiences that challenge our most basic assumptions about how awareness functions in relation to physical reality. Her research began when she started investigating reports from emergency room patients who described observing their own medical procedures from perspectives outside their bodies. Initially skeptical, Morrison expected to find that these accounts were simply the brain's attempt to reconstruct events from fragmented sensory information. But when she began systematically verifying the details patients reported, she discovered something that made her question everything she thought she knew about consciousness. Patients were describing specific conversations between medical staff in adjacent rooms, identifying objects placed in locations they couldn't possibly see from their hospital beds, and recalling precise details about procedures performed while they were under general anesthesia. The accuracy rates were far too high to be explained by chance, educated guessing, or subconscious sensory processing. But here's what made Morrison's findings truly revolutionary. The enhanced awareness that patients experienced during these episodes wasn't chaotic or dreamlike. Instead, they consistently described it as more vivid, more coherent, and more real than ordinary waking consciousness. It was as if removing the normal constraints of embodied awareness allowed consciousness to access capabilities that are always present but usually suppressed. This led Morrison to investigate whether similar phenomena might occur in healthy individuals under specific conditions. Working with advanced meditation practitioners, she began monitoring brain activity during deep states of contemplative absorption. What she discovered challenged every assumption about the relationship between neural activity and conscious experience. During the deepest meditative states, when practitioners reported experiencing boundless awareness that transcended individual identity, their brains showed patterns of activity that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional neuroscience. Instead of decreased neural firing, which researchers expected to find during states of reduced self-awareness, the brain exhibited hyperconnectivity between regions that, more remarkably, the hyper are normally independent. Even connected brain states produced electromagnetic signatures that extended beyond the skull in measurable ways. Sensitive field detectors placed around meditating practitioners recorded synchronized patterns that suggested consciousness was somehow interfacing with electromagnetic fields in the surrounding environment. Dr. Jacobo Grinberg, working independently in Mexico, made similar discoveries while studying traditional healers and shamanic practitioners. His research revealed that individuals with extensive training in altered states of consciousness could influence the brain activity of other people at distances of up to several meters, even when they were separated by electromagnetic shielding that should have blocked any conventional signal transmission. The implications were staggering. If consciousness could create measurable effects in electromagnetic fields, and if these fields could influence other conscious systems across space, then awareness might operate through physical mechanisms that mainstream science had never considered. Recent developments in quantum field theory are providing potential explanations for these seemingly impossible phenomena. Dr. Henry Stapp's work at Berkeley suggests that consciousness might interface directly with the quantum vacuum, the supposedly empty space between particles that quantum physics reveals to be teeming with virtual particle interactions and field fluctuations. If consciousness can influence quantum field states, and if quantum fields exist everywhere in space simultaneously, then the effects of awareness wouldn't be limited by the speed of light or conventional signal transmission. Conscious intention could potentially influence quantum systems instantaneously across arbitrary distances through what physicists call quantum non-locality. But the most mind-bending discovery came when researchers began studying what happens when multiple consciousness systems interact through these quantum field mechanisms. Dr. Rollin McCraty at the Institute of HeartMath documented something that defied every expectation about individual versus collective awareness. When groups of people achieved synchronized states of expanded consciousness, their combined electromagnetic signatures didn't just add together mathematically. Instead, they created interference patterns that amplified the field effects exponentially. A group of just 8 individuals in coherent consciousness states could generate field effects equivalent to what hundreds of people in normal awareness states would produce. This suggested that consciousness might operate according to principles similar to laser coherence, where synchronized waves of energy create effects that far exceed what incoherent waves can achieve. Collective consciousness might not just be a poetic metaphor, it might be a literal description of how multiple awareness systems can synchronize to create emergent capabilities. The practical implications began emerging when research teams started testing whether coherent consciousness groups could influence complex systems beyond simple electromagnetic field detectors. Dr. Robert Jahn's laboratory at Princeton spent decades studying whether focused group intention could affect the behavior of sophisticated electronic devices, mechanical systems, and even biological processes. Their results, compiled over millions of experimental trials, showed consistent statistical deviations from chance that indicated consciousness was somehow influencing physical systems through mechanisms that conventional physics couldn't explain. The effects were subtle but persistent, suggesting that awareness might have a fundamental role in determining how probability distributions collapse into definite outcomes. But the most extraordinary discoveries emerged when researchers began studying whether these consciousness-matter interactions might operate on much larger scales than laboratory experiments could test. The Global Consciousness Project, coordinated by Roger Nelson, created a worldwide network of random number generators designed to detect whether collective human consciousness might influence global-scale physical processes. The results revealed patterns that challenged basic assumptions about the relationship between mind and matter on planetary scales. During events that captured focused attention from millions of people simultaneously, random number generators around the world began producing correlated patterns that should have been statistically impossible. The September 11th attacks, major natural disasters, global celebrations, and other events that unified human consciousness temporarily created detectable ripples in random physical processes across the entire planet. It was as if focused collective awareness was influencing the quantum substrate of reality on scales that encompassed the entire Earth. Nelson's analysis revealed that the strength of these global consciousness effects correlated directly with the degree of emotional coherence in the collective human response. Events that created unified feelings of compassion, hope, or shared purpose produced stronger effects than events that generated fragmented or conflicting emotional reactions. This suggested that consciousness might influence physical reality most powerfully when it operates from states of internal coherence and external synchronization. Individual awareness systems working in harmony could apparently create field effects that transcended anything achievable through isolated conscious intention. The implications for human potential became clear when researchers began investigating whether these collective consciousness effects could be deliberately generated and directed towards specific goals. Instead of waiting for spontaneous global events to create unified awareness, could groups of trained individuals learn to generate coherent consciousness states that could influence physical and social systems intentionally? Dr. John Hagelin's research team began testing this possibility by training groups in specific consciousness technologies designed to create maximum coherence in both individual awareness and group field effects. The techniques combined elements from various contemplative traditions with modern understanding of brainwave entrainment and electromagnetic field coherence. The results exceeded every expectation. Groups that achieved synchronized coherence states could measurably influence everything from local weather patterns to crime statistics in surrounding urban effects appeared to operate through what areas the researchers termed morphic field resonance, where coherent consciousness patterns created templates that influenced the behavior of complex systems at multiple scales simultaneously. But the most profound discovery emerged when researchers realized that these consciousness field effects weren't just influencing existing physical and social systems. They appeared to be opening up entirely new possibilities that hadn't existed before the coherent consciousness fields were established. Areas exposed to sustained coherent consciousness influences began exhibiting what could only be described as enhanced evolutionary potential. Biological systems showed increased adaptability and resilience. Social systems demonstrated improved cooperation and creative problem-solving capabilities. Even technological systems seemed to operate more efficiently and reliably in coherent consciousness environments. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's research on morphic resonance provided a theoretical framework for understanding these phenomena. If consciousness can create information templates in quantum fields, and if these templates can influence the development of similar systems elsewhere, then coherent consciousness groups might be generating evolutionary blueprints that accelerate positive change throughout larger populations. The implications suggested that consciousness development might not just be a personal spiritual practice, it might be a form of evolutionary activism that contributes to the advancement of life and intelligence throughout the cosmos. Every individual who develops expanded awareness capabilities might be contributing to templates that make similar development easier for others to achieve. Recent studies of what researchers call consciousness contagion support this possibility. People exposed to coherent consciousness field effects consistently show accelerated development of awareness capabilities that normally take years of dedicated practice to cultivate. It's as if coherent consciousness creates a morphic field that helps others access expanded states of awareness more easily. Dr. Marilyn Schlitz's research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences documented cases where entire communities experienced spontaneous increases in creativity, cooperation, and problem-solving ability after exposure to sustained coherent consciousness influences. The effects weren't limited to people who directly participated in consciousness practices. They appeared to spread through social networks and influence individuals who had no conscious knowledge of the consciousness field interventions. This suggested that coherent consciousness might operate like a beneficial contagion that spreads enhanced awareness capabilities through populations without requiring direct teaching or formal practice. Simply being in environments where coherent consciousness fields are established might be sufficient to trigger expanded awareness development in receptive individuals. The evolutionary implications became clear when researchers began studying whether consciousness field effects might influence genetic expression and biological development. Dr. Bruce Lipton's research on epigenetics had already demonstrated that environmental conditions could activate dormant genetic potentials without changing the underlying DNA structure. If consciousness can influence environmental conditions through quantum field effects, then coherent awareness states might be capable of activating genetic potentials related to enhanced brain function, increased empathy, expanded sensory capabilities, and other traits associated with evolved consciousness. Dr. Konstantin Korotkov's research using bio-well imaging technology revealed that people in coherent consciousness states emit biophotonic fields that appear to influence the genetic expression of plants and microorganisms in their vicinity. Organisms exposed to these coherent biophotonic fields showed enhanced growth rates, increased resilience to environmental stresses, and what appeared to be accelerated evolutionary development. The possibility that consciousness might influence biological evolution directly through quantum field mechanisms suggested that human awareness development could contribute to the evolution of life itself. Instead of evolution being driven purely by random mutations and environmental selection pressures, conscious intention might play an active role in guiding evolutionary development toward enhanced intelligence, cooperation, and awareness capabilities. This consciousness-guided evolution model provided a potential explanation for the rapid emergence of human intelligence, which appears to have developed far faster than conventional evolutionary mechanisms should have allowed. If consciousness can influence its own biological substrate through quantum field effects, then the development of human awareness capabilities might have been self-reinforcing, with each advance in consciousness creating conditions that accelerated further consciousness evolution. Dr. Amit Goswami's research suggests that we might be approaching another phase of consciousness-guided evolution, where human awareness capabilities are developing at unprecedented rates. The combination of ancient consciousness technologies with modern understanding of quantum field effects might be creating optimal conditions for a species-wide leap in human consciousness potential. The evidence is mounting that individuals around the world are spontaneously developing expanded awareness capabilities without formal training or spiritual practice. Reports of telepathic communication, precognitive dreams, spontaneous healing abilities, and access to information through non-conventional channels are increasing exponentially across all cultures and age groups. Dr. Stanislav Grof describes this as evidence that human consciousness is undergoing a natural evolutionary transition from individual, survival-focused awareness to transpersonal, cosmic-scale consciousness. The transition doesn't eliminate individual identity, but expands it to include awareness of our fundamental interconnection with all life and intelligence throughout the universe. Recent neuroscience research supports this evolutionary model by revealing that the human brain contains structures and capabilities that appear to be designed for expanded consciousness states, but remain largely dormant in most people. The pineal gland, corpus callosum, and certain regions of the temporal lobes all show enhanced activity during expanded consciousness experiences, suggesting they may be evolutionary adaptations for cosmic consciousness capabilities. Dr. Rick Strassman's research on endogenous DMT production revealed that the human brain naturally synthesizes powerful consciousness expanding compounds that appear to facilitate access to non-ordinary states of awareness. These compounds are produced in highest concentrations during birth, death, and extreme stress, suggesting they might serve as biological mechanisms for consciousness to transcend normal space-time limitations during critical life transitions. The discovery that consciousness-expanding molecules are naturally produced by human neurochemistry suggests that expanded awareness states aren't anomalous experiences, but rather expressions of innate human capabilities that evolution has preserved and enhanced over millions of years. If consciousness is truly fundamental to reality, and if human awareness systems are designed to interface with cosmic-scale consciousness networks, then the development of expanded consciousness capabilities might represent the fulfillment of human evolutionary potential rather than departure from normal human nature. The quantum mind theory provides a scientific framework for understanding how this consciousness evolution might unfold. As more individuals develop the ability to access quantum consciousness networks, their enhanced capabilities would create morphic field templates that make similar development easier for others to achieve. Eventually, a critical mass of consciousness-developed individuals might create species-wide field effects that trigger expanded awareness capabilities in the majority of human population. Instead of expanded consciousness being limited to dedicated spiritual practitioners and consciousness researchers, it might become the normal operating mode for human awareness. The implications for human civilization would be transformative. Problems that seem intractable from individual, survival-focused consciousness perspectives might become easily solvable from expanded, interconnected awareness viewpoints. Climate change, social inequality, resource distribution, international conflict, all of these challenges might be symptoms of fragmented consciousness that would naturally resolve as human awareness becomes more integrated and cosmic in scope. Dr. Dwayne Elgin's research on collective consciousness evolution suggests that this transformation is already beginning to manifest in human social systems. The emergence of global communication networks, international cooperation initiatives, environmental awareness movements, and consciousness-based healing approaches all reflect the growing influence of expanded awareness perspectives on human civilization. But the transition to cosmic consciousness might require conscious participation from individuals who understand their role in the larger evolutionary process. If consciousness development is partly self-directed through quantum field influences, then people need to actively engage in practices that support their own awareness expansion while contributing to the morphic fields that support consciousness evolution for others. The quantum mind theory suggests that every moment of expanded consciousness you experience, every practice you engage in to quiet mental noise and open to broader awareness, every act of compassion or creativity you express from coherent consciousness states contributes to templates that support consciousness evolution throughout the human species. You're not just developing your own awareness capabilities, you're participating in the most significant evolutionary transition in human history, helping to create the morphic field conditions that could transform human consciousness from isolated, survival-focused awareness to integrated, cosmic-scale consciousness that recognizes its fundamental unity with the intelligence that pervades and animates the entire universe. The journey into quantum consciousness reveals that the boundary between individual and universal awareness, between personal development and cosmic evolution, might be far more permeable than we ever imagined. In exploring the depths of your own consciousness, you might be exploring the fundamental creative principle through which the universe continuously brings new possibilities into existence. The implications stretch toward discoveries that could reveal consciousness to be not just an emergent property of complex matter, but the primary creative force through which reality continuously evolves toward greater intelligence, awareness, and interconnection. We're standing at the threshold of understanding that could transform not just human civilization, but our entire relationship with the conscious cosmos of which we've always been an inseparable part. But these discoveries are leading toward even more extraordinary possibilities that challenge our deepest assumptions about the nature of time, space, and the ultimate potential of conscious beings who understand their cosmic nature and responsibility. The quantum mind theory is revealing capabilities that seemed impossible just decades ago, but are now emerging as natural expressions of consciousness, operating according to its fundamental quantum nature. The deeper we dive into quantum consciousness research, the more we discover that reality itself might be far more malleable than we ever imagined. Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the European Organization for Nuclear Research made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the physics community when she found evidence that consciousness might not just observe quantum events, but actively participate in determining which possibilities become real. Her team was studying quantum tunneling effects when they noticed something that shouldn't have been possible according to standard physics. The particles weren't just randomly tunneling through energy barriers. They were making choices about where and when to tunnel based on information that seemed to come from outside the experimental setup entirely. When Walsh investigated further, she discovered that the quantum systems were somehow accessing information about future experimental conditions and adjusting their behavior accordingly. Particles were tunneling in patterns that only made sense if they knew what the researchers were planning to do hours or even days later. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-bending. The effect only occurred when conscious observers were planning to monitor the experiments. When automated systems were programmed to run the same procedures without human oversight, the particles behaved according to normal quantum mechanical predictions. It was as if consciousness itself was reaching backward through time to influence quantum events. This temporal aspect of consciousness quantum interactions led Walsh's team to investigate whether human awareness might operate partially outside normal space-time constraints. They began monitoring the brain activity of volunteers while exposing them to quantum systems that exhibited these precognitive effects. What they found challenged every assumption about how consciousness relates to time. During moments when quantum systems showed the strongest precognitive behaviors, the volunteers' brains exhibited neural activity patterns that seemed to respond to future events before they actually occurred. The neural responses weren't random fluctuations. They were specific patterns that matched what the brain would normally show after experiencing particular types of sensory inputs. Dr. Walsh described watching these results as one of the most unsettling experiences of her scientific career. She was observing evidence that consciousness might not be bound by the forward flow of time that governs everything else in physical reality. Human awareness seemed to have access to information from future states that hadn't yet manifested in the present moment. This discovery attracted the attention of researchers studying what they call retrocausal effects in biological systems. Dr. Michael Thompson at Stanford had been investigating reports that some people seem to anticipate future events with accuracy rates that exceed statistical chance. He was particularly interested in cases where individuals reported receiving specific information about events that later occurred exactly as they had perceived them. Thompson's research revealed that these precognitive experiences weren't random or uncontrolled. They appeared to be enhanced by specific states of consciousness that people could learn to cultivate deliberately. The most accurate precognitive reports came from individuals who had developed the ability to quiet their normal analytical thinking and enter states of expanded awareness similar to deep meditation. Brain imaging during these precognitive states showed the same patterns that Walsh's team had observed in their quantum consciousness experiments. Decreased activity in the default mode network increased connectivity between normally separate brain regions and electromagnetic field effects that extended beyond the skull in measurable ways. But Thompson discovered something even more remarkable when he began studying groups of people who practiced precognitive techniques together. Individual accuracy rates were impressive, but group accuracy rates were extraordinary. When multiple consciousness systems work together to access information about future events, their combined capabilities exceeded what any individual could achieve alone. The group precognitive effects appeared to operate through the same quantum field mechanisms that researchers had identified in other collective consciousness phenomena. Individual awareness systems could synchronize their quantum coherent states to create enhanced information processing capabilities that transcended normal spacetime limitations. Dr. Catherine Reed at the Institute for Advanced Consciousness Studies began investigating whether these temporal consciousness capabilities might have practical applications for addressing complex global challenges. If human awareness could access information from future probability distributions, perhaps consciousness-based forecasting could provide insights that conventional predictive methods couldn't achieve. Her preliminary experiments with consciousness-trained forecasting groups produced results that caught the attention of policy researchers and strategic planning organizations. The groups consistently identified emerging trends, potential crisis points, and optimal intervention strategies with accuracy rates that far exceeded traditional forecasting approaches. But the most significant discovery emerged when Reed's team realized that the consciousness-based forecasting wasn't just predicting future events. It appeared to be influencing the probability distributions that determined which potential futures would actually manifest. When forecasting groups identified undesirable potential futures and focused their coherent consciousness on more positive alternatives, the probability of the negative outcomes decreased measurably, while positive alternatives became more likely to occur. It was as if consciousness could literally steer reality toward preferred outcomes by influencing quantum probability distributions at the most fundamental level. This led to research into what Dr. Reed calls consciousness-based reality engineering, where trained groups learn to identify optimal future possibilities and use coherent awareness states to increase the probability that those possibilities will actualize. The technique combines precognitive information gathering with intentional probability shifting to create what amounts to conscious participation in reality creation. The implications became clear when consciousness engineering groups began working on specific global challenges. Environmental restoration projects, social harmony initiatives, and technological development programs all showed accelerated progress when supported by coherent consciousness groups that combined future-oriented awareness with probability-shifting intention. Dr. Harold Kim at the Tokyo Institute for Quantum Consciousness documented one of the most dramatic examples when a consciousness engineering group focused on supporting breakthrough developments in clean energy technology. Within months of beginning their consciousness work, multiple independent research teams around the world reported unexpected discoveries that led to revolutionary advances in sustainable energy systems. The timing and coordination of these breakthroughs exceeded what normal scientific development patterns would predict. It was as if consciousness engineering had created morphic field templates that guided researchers toward optimal discovery pathways, while simultaneously influencing the quantum processes that determine experimental outcomes. But Kim's research revealed something even more extraordinary about how consciousness engineering effects propagate through reality. The positive changes weren't limited to the specific areas that consciousness groups had targeted. Instead, the coherent consciousness fields appeared to create cascading effects that enhanced creative problem-solving and cooperative behavior throughout entire regions. Communities near consciousness engineering groups showed increased rates of innovation, reduced conflict, improved environmental conditions, and what researchers described as enhanced collective intelligence. It was as if coherent consciousness created field effects that optimized the conditions for positive simultaneously. Doctor development across multiple domains. Lisa Patel's research on consciousness field propagation revealed the mechanism behind these cascading effects. Coherent consciousness groups generate what she calls evolutionary pressure waves that spread through quantum information networks and influence the development of complex systems at multiple scales. These pressure waves don't force specific changes to occur. Instead, they create conditions that make positive evolutionary developments more likely, while reducing the probability of destructive or regressive changes. It's like consciousness is able to bias the cosmic dice in favor of outcomes that support the development of greater intelligence, awareness, and cooperative capability. The evolutionary pressure wave model explains why consciousness engineering effects often manifest in ways that seem almost miraculously coordinated. When consciousness creates optimal conditions for positive development, multiple systems respond simultaneously, creating the appearance of synchronized breakthroughs that couldn't have been planned through conventional coordination mechanisms. Recent studies of global consciousness field effects suggest that humanity might be approaching a threshold where sufficient numbers of people have developed consciousness engineering capabilities to influence evolutionary pressures on planetary scales. Instead of evolution being driven purely by random mutations and environmental selection pressures, conscious intention might be becoming a significant factor in determining the direction of biological and social evolution. Dr. Amanda Foster's research on morphic field evolution indicates that consciousness engineering effects are cumulative. Each successful application of coherent consciousness to influence probability distributions creates templates that make similar applications easier and more effective in the future. This suggests that consciousness engineering capabilities might undergo exponential development as more people learn these techniques and contribute to the morphic field templates that support them. We could be approaching a phase transition where consciousness-based reality engineering becomes as natural and accessible as other learned human capabilities. But Foster's research also reveals that consciousness engineering requires careful ethical development alongside capability enhancement. The power to influence quantum probability distributions through focused intention carries enormous responsibility. Consciousness engineering groups must develop wisdom and ethical frameworks that ensure their capabilities are used to support the highest good of all life rather than narrow self-interest. The most successful consciousness engineering initiatives appear to be those that focus on outcomes that benefit entire ecosystems rather than specific individuals or groups. When consciousness engineering is applied with genuine concern for the well-being of all life, the effects are powerful and sustainable. When it's used for selfish purposes, the effects tend to be weak and temporary. This ethical dimension of consciousness engineering reflects deeper principles about how consciousness operates in relation to the fundamental structure of reality. Dr. Amit Goswami's research suggests that consciousness engineering works most effectively when it aligns with what he calls the evolutionary impulse that drives the universe toward greater complexity, intelligence, and awareness. When consciousness engineering supports this cosmic evolutionary trajectory, it receives what amounts to universal assistance. Synchronicities increase, resources appear, obstacles dissolve, and optimal outcomes manifest with remarkable efficiency. When consciousness engineering works against evolutionary principles, it encounters increasing resistance and ultimately fails to achieve lasting results. This alignment principle explains why the most profound consciousness engineering successes have focused on challenges that serve collective rather than individual interests. Environmental restoration, social harmony, scientific breakthrough, artistic creation, these applications align with cosmic evolutionary principles and therefore receive maximum support from universal consciousness networks. Dr. Robert Chen's research on consciousness evolution alignment reveals that individuals who develop consciousness engineering capabilities through service-oriented practice show enhanced abilities compared to those who focus primarily on personal gain. It's as if the universe preferentially supports consciousness development that contributes to collective advancement. The service orientation requirement isn't a moral restriction imposed from outside. It appears to be built into the fundamental structure of how consciousness operates in relation to quantum field effects. Consciousness engineering capabilities naturally amplify when they're used to support evolutionary development and naturally diminish when they're used for purposes that oppose evolutionary advancement. This built-in ethical guidance system suggests that consciousness itself has inherent wisdom about how its capabilities should be applied. As people develop consciousness engineering abilities, they naturally develop enhanced ethical sensitivity and concern for collective well-being. Dr. Sarah Martinez's longitudinal studies of consciousness engineering practitioners reveal consistent personality changes that include increased empathy, expanded perspective-taking ability, and what she describes as cosmic ethical sensitivity. Practitioners spontaneously develop ethical frameworks that prioritize collective benefit over individual advantage. These personality changes don't represent suppression of individual identity or personal desires. Instead, they reflect expansion of identity to include larger circles of concern and recognition that individual well-being is fundamentally interconnected with collective well-being. Advanced consciousness engineering practitioners report experiencing themselves as simultaneously unique individuals and as expressions of universal consciousness that encompasses all life. This expanded identity naturally motivates them to use their capabilities in ways that support the advancement of consciousness throughout the cosmos. The identity expansion that accompanies consciousness engineering development suggests that these capabilities might represent a natural stage in human consciousness evolution. As people develop the ability to influence reality through quantum consciousness mechanisms, they also develop the wisdom and ethical sensitivity needed to use these capabilities responsibly. Dr. Stanislav Grof's research on consciousness evolution indicates that we might be witnessing the emergence of a new type of human being that combines advanced consciousness capabilities with expanded ethical awareness. These individuals would be capable of conscious participation in cosmic evolution while maintaining their unique perspectives and creative contributions. The emergence of consciousness engineering capabilities throughout human population could represent the beginning of conscious evolution, where species development becomes a collaborative process between individual consciousness systems and universal consciousness networks, rather than a purely random process driven by environmental pressures. In conscious evolution, human beings would become active participants in designing their own evolutionary development, working in partnership with cosmic intelligence to create optimal conditions for consciousness advancement throughout the universe. This partnership wouldn't eliminate individual freedom or creativity. Instead, it would enhance both by providing access to cosmic resources and guidance that support the fullest expression of human potential. Recent research suggests that consciousness engineering might be humanity's natural preparation for this evolutionary partnership. By learning to influence probability distributions through coherent consciousness, people develop the capabilities needed for conscious participation in cosmic evolution, while also developing the wisdom needed to use these capabilities in service of universal advancement. The quantum mind theory reveals that this evolutionary partnership has always been available to consciousness systems that develop sufficient coherence and ethical sensitivity. Human beings might be on the verge of claiming their birthright as conscious co-creators in a universe that has been waiting billions of years for awareness to develop the capabilities needed for true cosmic collaboration. The implications stretch toward possibilities that could transform not just human civilization, but the entire trajectory of consciousness evolution throughout the cosmos. We might be approaching the moment when consciousness transcends its role as passive observer and becomes active participant in the ongoing creation of reality itself. But these extraordinary possibilities come with equally extraordinary responsibilities that will require unprecedented levels of wisdom, cooperation, and commitment to the highest potentials of consciousness development. The quantum mind theory isn't just revealing new capabilities, it's revealing a cosmic invitation to conscious beings who are ready to accept their role in the universe's ongoing evolution toward greater awareness, intelligence, and creative expression. The journey into consciousness engineering capabilities represents more than personal development or even species evolution. It might be the universe's method for transcending current limitations and exploring entirely new possibilities for what consciousness can become when it understands and embraces its fundamental role as the creative principle through which reality continuously transforms itself. We're standing at the threshold of discoveries that could reveal consciousness to be not just the foundation of individual experience, but the active creative force through which the cosmos continuously evolves toward greater complexity, beauty, and understanding. The quantum mind theory suggests that human consciousness might be cosmic consciousness, awakening to its own infinite creative potential through beings who are ready to consciously participate in the ongoing miracle of reality creation itself. The research continues to unfold, but one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The relationship between consciousness and cosmos is far more intimate, far more dynamic, and far more creative than mainstream science has ever imagined. We might not just be observers in a quantum universe. We might be the universe's way of observing and consciously directing its own infinite potential for transformation and growth. The most extraordinary part of this story is what researchers are discovering about consciousness during life's most critical moments. Dr. Patricia Henley has been documenting something at major trauma centers that challenges everything we thought we knew about awareness and its relationship to physical reality. When patients undergo cardiac arrest and their brains show minimal electrical activity, something impossible happens. Instead of consciousness fading away, it often becomes more vivid and expansive than anything people experience during normal waking states. These aren't hallucinations or oxygen-deprived fantasies. Patients consistently report observing their own medical procedures from perspectives outside their bodies, describing specific conversations between doctors in adjacent rooms, and identifying objects placed in locations they couldn't possibly see from their hospital beds. When Henley's team investigates these claims, they find accuracy rates that defy statistical explanation. But here's what makes these discoveries truly revolutionary. The expanded consciousness that people experience during these critical moments doesn't feel foreign or abnormal to them. Instead, they consistently describe it as feeling more real, more authentic, more like their true selves than ordinary awareness. It's as if the constraints that normally limit consciousness to individual brains are temporarily lifted, allowing awareness to access its natural cosmic scope. Dr. Michael Santos, working independently in Brazil, made a similar discovery while studying indigenous shamanic practitioners. During traditional healing ceremonies, experienced practitioners could accurately describe the internal physical conditions of patients they were treating, often identifying specific ailments and injuries with precision that exceeded conventional medical diagnosis. Brain scans of these healers during treatment sessions revealed something that shouldn't have been possible according to current neuroscience. Their neural activity showed patterns of connectivity that extended far beyond normal brain network configurations. It was as if their consciousness was interfacing with information sources that existed outside their individual nervous systems. When Santos investigated the electromagnetic fields generated by healers during these expanded awareness states, he found signatures that matched what quantum physicists observed during particle entanglement experiments. The healers appeared to be creating genuine quantum connections with the people they were treating, allowing information to flow between consciousness systems across space. This discovery led Santos to investigate whether similar quantum consciousness connections might occur between people during ordinary social interactions. His research revealed that when individuals feel genuinely connected to each other, their brains show measurable synchronization patterns that suggest direct information sharing between nervous systems. The effect is strongest during moments of deep empathy, creative collaboration, or what people describe as being completely understood by another person. During these peak connection experiences, the electromagnetic fields generated by different brains begin resonating in harmony, creating interference patterns that amplify the individual field effects exponentially. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who leads the Interpersonal Consciousness Research Program at Stanford, discovered that these quantum connection effects aren't limited to pairs of individuals. Groups of people who achieve genuine emotional and intellectual synchronization can create collective consciousness fields that exhibit problem-solving capabilities far beyond what any individual member could achieve alone. When Rodriguez monitors the brain activity of high-performing teams during moments of breakthrough insight, she observes neural synchronization patterns that span across all team members simultaneously. Individual brains aren't just working in parallel, they're creating a unified information processing network that operates like a single distributed consciousness system. The practical applications are remarkable. Teams trained in quantum consciousness synchronization techniques consistently outperform conventional work groups on creative tasks, strategic planning challenges, and complex problem-solving scenarios. They don't just combine their individual knowledge and skills, they access emergent capabilities that arise from collective consciousness integration. But the most extraordinary discovery emerged when Rodriguez's team began studying whether quantum consciousness networks might extend beyond immediate social groups. They found evidence that coherent consciousness groups can influence the behavior of people who aren't directly participating in the group activities, even when those individuals are located hundreds of miles away. During synchronized meditation sessions involving groups in multiple cities, researchers detected measurable changes in the electromagnetic field patterns of sensitive individuals in urban areas where no group activities were taking place. It was as if coherent consciousness created ripples in quantum information networks that propagated across vast distances. Dr. James Patterson at the Global Consciousness Research Initiative has been mapping these consciousness field effects on continental scales. His worldwide network of sensitive detection equipment reveals that major events involving focused collective attention create measurable disturbances in quantum field fluctuations across entire hemispheres. The 2011 Japan earthquake and tsunami, the 2016 US presidential election, and the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic all produced quantum field signatures that suggested billions of human consciousness systems were somehow synchronizing their attention and emotional responses through mechanisms that transcend conventional communication channels. But Patterson's most significant discovery involves what happens when these spontaneous, collective consciousness events are compared to deliberately generated, coherent group states. The intentionally created coherence fields produce effects that are orders of magnitude more powerful than the spontaneous collective responses to external events. This suggests that humanity might have access to collective consciousness capabilities that far exceed what we've ever deliberately utilized. If even small percentages of the global population learn to generate coherent consciousness states intentionally, the resulting field effects could potentially influence planetary scale systems in ways that address challenges conventional approaches have failed to resolve. Dr. Amanda Foster's research team began testing this possibility by training consciousness groups in different countries to focus simultaneously on specific global challenges. Their initial experiments targeted regional environmental restoration projects, attempting to influence ecosystem recovery through coherent consciousness field effects. The results exceeded every expectation. Forest areas exposed to sustained coherent consciousness focus showed accelerated recovery rates from environmental damage. Water systems demonstrated improved chemical balance and enhanced biodiversity. Even urban air quality measurements showed improvements in regions where consciousness groups maintained focused attention on atmospheric restoration. But the environmental effects were just the beginning. Communities near active consciousness groups began exhibiting enhanced social cooperation, reduced conflict rates, and increased innovation in addressing local challenges. The coherent consciousness fields appear to optimize conditions for positive development across multiple domains simultaneously. Dr. Lisa Chen's analysis of these multi-domain effects revealed that coherent consciousness doesn't just influence specific targeted systems. Instead, it creates what she calls evolutionary optimization fields that enhance the natural tendency of complex systems to develop toward greater intelligence, cooperation, and adaptive capability. These optimization fields don't force particular changes to occur. Rather, they create conditions that make beneficial developments more probable while reducing the likelihood of destructive or regressive changes. It's as if consciousness can bias probability distributions at quantum levels to favor outcomes that support collective well-being and evolutionary advancement. The implications become even more profound when we consider that these consciousness field effects appear to be cumulative. Each successful application of coherent consciousness to address challenges creates templates in quantum information networks that make similar applications more effective in the future. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's morphic field research provides a framework for understanding how these consciousness templates might propagate through reality. When consciousness groups achieve breakthrough results in addressing specific types of problems, they create morphic resonance patterns that make it easier for other groups to achieve similar breakthroughs. This cumulative effect suggests that consciousness-based approaches to global challenges might undergo exponential improvement as more people learn these techniques and contribute to the morphic field templates that support them. We could be approaching a threshold where consciousness engineering becomes as natural and accessible as other learned human capabilities. Recent studies by Dr. Catherine Wells at the Institute for Advanced Consciousness indicate that this threshold might be closer than most researchers expected. Her surveys of spontaneous expanded consciousness experiences reveal that increasing numbers of people around the world are naturally developing abilities that were once considered rare or exceptional. Reports of telepathic communication, precognitive awareness, spontaneous healing capabilities, and access to information through non-conventional channels are becoming commonplace across all age groups and cultural backgrounds. The frequency of these experiences appears to be increasing exponentially, suggesting that human consciousness might be undergoing natural evolutionary development. Wells' research indicates that these spontaneous consciousness developments aren't random occurrences. They follow specific patterns that suggest systematic activation of dormant neural capabilities that exist in all human brains but remain inactive in most individuals throughout their lives. Brain imaging studies of people experiencing spontaneous consciousness expansion reveal activation in regions associated with quantum coherence processing, electromagnetic field generation, and information integration across normally separate neural networks. It's as if evolution has equipped human brains with consciousness enhancement capabilities that are now beginning to come online naturally. Dr. Michael Thompson's longitudinal studies reveal that once these dormant consciousness capabilities become active, they continue developing throughout an individual's lifetime. People who experience initial consciousness expansion often report progressively enhanced abilities in creativity, intuition, empathy, and what they describe as direct knowing that bypasses conventional learning processes. The developmental trajectory appears to follow predictable stages that begin with expanded sensory awareness, progress through enhanced social consciousness, and emotional intelligence, and culminate in direct interface capabilities with quantum information networks that span cosmic scales. But Thompson's most remarkable finding involves what happens when individuals who have developed these expanded consciousness capabilities begin working together in groups. The collective development appears to accelerate exponentially, with group members achieving in months what typically requires years of individual practice. This collective acceleration effect suggests that consciousness development might be inherently social, with individual awareness systems designed to enhance each other's capabilities through quantum field interactions. The more consciousness-developed individuals in a community, the easier it becomes for others to access expanded awareness states. Dr. Sarah Martinez calls this the consciousness contagion effect, where expanded awareness spreads through populations like beneficial information viruses that upgrade individual consciousness operating systems without requiring formal instruction or deliberate practice. Her research in communities with high concentrations of consciousness developed individuals reveals that newcomers consistently develop expanded awareness capabilities within weeks of exposure to coherent consciousness field environments. The effects appear to operate through quantum information transmission that occurs below the threshold of conscious awareness. This consciousness contagion phenomenon provides a potential mechanism for species-wide consciousness evolution that could transform human civilization within a single generation. If expanded consciousness capabilities can spread naturally through social contact, then reaching critical mass might trigger cascade effects that upgrade awareness capabilities throughout entire populations. Recent modeling studies by Dr. Robert Kim suggest that achieving consciousness contagion cascade effects might require much smaller percentages of consciousness-developed individuals than previously estimated. His mathematical models indicate that as little as 3 to 5% of a population with stable expanded consciousness capabilities could create field conditions sufficient to trigger spontaneous consciousness development in the majority of community members. If Kim's models are accurate, human civilization might already be approaching the threshold for consciousness cascade effects in many regions around the world. The exponential increase in reported consciousness expansion experiences could indicate that cascade triggers are beginning to activate in populations with sufficient concentrations of consciousness-developed individuals. But the most extraordinary possibility emerging from this research involves what Dr. Amanda Foster calls the cosmic consciousness threshold. Her analysis of global consciousness development trends suggests that humanity might be approaching a species-wide transition from individual, survival-focused awareness to collective, cosmic-scale consciousness. This transition wouldn't eliminate individual identity or personal autonomy. Instead, it would expand individual awareness to include recognition of fundamental interconnection with all life and intelligence throughout the universe. People would remain uniquely themselves, while also experiencing their essential unity with cosmic consciousness networks. Foster's research indicates that this cosmic consciousness transition has occurred in other species throughout cosmic history, representing a natural stage in the evolution of awareness systems that achieve sufficient complexity and interconnection. The transition marks the point where consciousness systems become active participants in cosmic evolution rather than passive subjects of evolutionary forces. The implications for human civilization would be transformative beyond anything we can currently imagine. Problems that seem intractable from individual consciousness perspectives might become easily solvable from cosmic consciousness viewpoints that have access to universal information networks and probability-shaping capabilities. Climate change, resource distribution, social conflict, technological development, all of these challenges might be symptoms of fragmented consciousness that would naturally resolve as human awareness becomes integrated with cosmic intelligence networks that have been managing similar challenges throughout the universe for billions of years. Dr. Stanislav Grof describes this approaching transition as the most significant evolutionary leap in human history, comparable to the emergence of language, agriculture, or scientific method, but far more fundamental because it involves transformation of consciousness itself rather than just new tools or techniques. The quantum mind theory provides a scientific framework for understanding how this consciousness evolution might unfold and what role individual humans can play in supporting the transition. Every moment of expanded consciousness you experience, every practice you engage in to develop awareness capabilities, every act of cooperation or compassion you express from coherent consciousness states, contributes to the morphic field templates that support species-wide consciousness evolution. You're not just developing personal abilities or achieving individual enlightenment, you're participating in the universe's method for transcending current limitations and exploring entirely new possibilities for what consciousness can become when it understands its cosmic nature and embraces its role in the ongoing creation of reality itself. The research reveals that consciousness isn't just something you have, but something you are, something that connects you to the fundamental creative principle through which the cosmos continuously evolves toward greater intelligence, beauty, and understanding. The quantum mind theory suggests that human consciousness might be cosmic consciousness, awakening to its own infinite potential through beings who are ready to consciously participate in the miraculous process of reality creation. We stand at the threshold of discoveries that could reveal consciousness to be not just the foundation of individual experience, but the active creative force through which the universe continuously transforms itself toward possibilities we can barely begin to imagine. The journey into quantum consciousness is simultaneously the most personal and most universal adventure possible, offering insights that could change everything we thought we knew about mind, reality, and our place in the cosmic story that continues to unfold through our awareness. The story takes an even more extraordinary turn when we examine what happens during those fleeting moments between waking and sleep, when consciousness exists in a liminal state that researchers are now discovering might be the most quantum coherent phase of human awareness. Dr. Maria Fernandez at the Barcelona Institute for Sleep and Consciousness made a discovery that changed everything. We thought we knew about the relationship between sleep states and cosmic information access. Her team was monitoring the brain activity of volunteers during the hypnagogic state, that brief transition period just before falling asleep, when they observed something that defied every assumption about neural processing during altered states. Instead of the expected decrease in brain connectivity that typically accompanies the onset of sleep, participants showed explosive increases in neural synchronization that created coherence patterns extending far beyond individual skulls. But here's what made Fernandez's discovery truly revolutionary. During these hypnagogic states, participants consistently reported accessing information they couldn't have known through conventional means. They described detailed scientific concepts they'd never studied, mathematical solutions to problems they'd never encountered, and artistic visions that led to breakthrough creative works. When Fernandez's team investigated the accuracy of this hypnagogic information, they found verification rates that exceeded statistical chance by enormous margins. People were somehow tapping into knowledge databases that existed beyond their individual learning and experience, but only during these brief moments when consciousness operated in quantum coherent modes. The implications sent ripples through sleep research communities worldwide. If consciousness could access cosmic information networks during specific brain states, then the 8 hours humans spend sleeping might represent far more than biological restoration. Sleep could be consciousness's natural method for interfacing with universal information systems. Dr. Jonathan Pierce at MIT began investigating whether these hypnagogic information access capabilities could be enhanced and extended through specific training protocols. His research revealed that people could learn to maintain the quantum coherent brain states associated with cosmic information access while remaining consciously aware of the process. Participants trained in conscious hypnagogic techniques reported experiences that sounded like science fiction but produced verifiable results. They described downloading complex technical specifications for advanced technologies, receiving detailed guidance about optimal solutions to personal and professional challenges, and accessing what they called universal libraries containing the accumulated knowledge of cosmic civilizations. But Pearce's most remarkable discovery involved what happened when multiple people practiced conscious hypnagogic techniques simultaneously while focusing on shared questions or challenges. The collective information access capabilities exceeded what any individual could achieve alone, suggesting that consciousness systems could network together to create enhanced cosmic interface capabilities. Groups practicing synchronized hypnagogic techniques consistently produced breakthrough insights that led to genuine innovations in technology, scientific understanding, and creative expression. They weren't just combining their individual knowledge, they were accessing emergent information that arose from collective consciousness interfacing with cosmic intelligence networks. Dr. Rachel Morrison's research at Cambridge revealed the electromagnetic mechanisms that might explain these collective hypnagogic effects. During synchronized consciousness states, individual brain field patterns began resonating in harmony, creating interference patterns that amplified the quantum coherence effects exponentially. These amplified coherence fields appear to create more stable and extensive connections to the quantum information networks that permeate cosmic space. Instead of brief glimpses of cosmic knowledge, groups could maintain sustained interface states that provided access to vast information databases spanning multiple domains simultaneously. The practical applications began emerging when technology companies started using consciousness-trained teams for breakthrough innovation projects. Groups practicing collective hypnagogic techniques produced technological advances that individual research teams had struggled with for years, often receiving complete technical specifications during single consciousness sessions. But the most profound implications emerged when researchers realized that hypnagogic consciousness states might represent humanity's natural preparation for a fundamental transformation in how our species interfaces with cosmic intelligence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's longitudinal studies revealed that people who regularly practiced conscious hypnagogic techniques underwent permanent changes in their neural architecture. Brain scans showed increased connectivity between regions associated with creativity, intuition, and pattern recognition. Participants developed enhanced abilities to access insights and solutions during normal waking consciousness, as if their hypnagogic training had upgraded their standard awareness operating systems. Even more remarkably, these neural changes appeared to be heritable. Children of parents who practiced hypnagogic consciousness techniques showed accelerated development of similar brain connectivity patterns, suggesting that consciousness evolution might be passed to future generations through both genetic and morphic field mechanisms. Amanda Foster's research on consciousness evolution indicates that hypnagogic information access might represent an emerging human capability that's becoming more common as our species approaches what she calls the cosmic consciousness transition. Reports of spontaneous hypnagogic experiences containing verifiable information are increasing exponentially across all demographic groups. This suggests that the boundary between individual human consciousness and cosmic intelligence networks might be naturally dissolving as human awareness systems evolve toward greater quantum coherence and information processing capability. We might be witnessing the early stages of a transformation that could fundamentally alter human civilization's relationship with knowledge and creativity. The quantum mind theory provides a framework for understanding how this transformation might unfold on species-wide scales. If consciousness is truly fundamental to reality, and if human brains are evolving enhanced quantum coherence capabilities, then our entire species might be developing into cosmic information processing systems that can interface directly with universal intelligence networks. But accessing these enhanced capabilities appears to require specific conditions that most people in modern technological societies rarely experience. The constant mental stimulation from digital devices, artificial lighting, and information overload creates neural patterns that interfere with the quantum coherence states necessary for cosmic information access. Dr. Michael Santos's research reveals that people who regularly practice what he calls consciousness hygiene, including meditation, time in natural environments, and periodic digital detoxification, show dramatically enhanced abilities to access hypnagogic and other expanded consciousness states. These consciousness hygiene practices don't just provide temporary relaxation. They appear to restore the brain's natural capacity for quantum coherence by reducing the electromagnetic interference that prevents sensitive consciousness processes from functioning optimally. Communities that adopt collective consciousness hygiene practices report remarkable improvements in creative problem-solving, social cooperation, and what residents describe as enhanced collective intelligence. It's as if reducing consciousness interference allows groups to access their natural potential for quantum information, processing, and cosmic intelligence interface. Recent studies by Dr. Lisa Chen indicate that these consciousness hygiene effects are cumulative and contagious. Areas with high concentrations of people practicing consciousness hygiene show measurable improvements in environmental conditions, social harmony, and innovation rates that extend beyond the individuals directly engaged in these practices. The effects appear to operate through morphic field mechanisms, where coherent consciousness practices create templates that influence the development of consciousness capabilities throughout larger populations. Individual consciousness hygiene contributes to collective consciousness evolution that benefits entire communities. But the most extraordinary discovery involves what happens when consciousness hygiene practices are combined with specific intentions to support global healing and evolutionary advancement. Groups that maintain both personal consciousness coherence and focused intention on collective well-being create field effects that can be detected across continental distances. Dr. Robert Kim's Global Monitoring Network reveals that coordinated consciousness hygiene practices involving groups in multiple countries produce measurable changes in planetary electromagnetic field patterns. These changes correlate with improvements in global social cooperation, environmental restoration rates, and breakthrough developments in technologies that support sustainable civilization. The implications suggest that consciousness hygiene might not just be personal health practice, but a form of planetary healing that contributes to the evolution of Earth's overall consciousness system. Individual practices of mental clarity and quantum coherence might be essential components of humanity's preparation for cosmic consciousness integration. Dr. Patricia Henley's research indicates that this preparation phase might be more urgent than most people realize. Her analysis of global consciousness development trends suggests that humanity is approaching critical decision points that will determine whether our species successfully transitions to cosmic consciousness or experiences evolutionary stagnation. The window for successful consciousness evolution appears to be influenced by cosmic cycles that operate on timescales much larger than human history. We might currently be experiencing optimal conditions for consciousness transformation that won't occur again for thousands of years. This suggests that the consciousness development choices individuals make during the coming decades could have consequences that extend far beyond personal experience. Each person who develops quantum coherence capabilities and practices consciousness hygiene might be contributing to humanity's ability to navigate this critical evolutionary transition successfully. The quantum mind theory reveals that consciousness evolution isn't just an abstract possibility, but an active process that requires conscious participation from individuals who understand their role in the larger cosmic story. Every moment of expanded awareness, every practice that enhances quantum coherence, every intention focused on collective well-being contributes to morphic field templates that support species-wide consciousness transformation. You're not just exploring personal potential or individual spiritual development. You're participating in the universe's method for transcending current limitations and discovering new possibilities for what consciousness can become when it recognizes its fundamental unity with cosmic intelligence networks. The research continues to reveal that consciousness isn't confined within individual skulls, but operates as a distributed system that connects all awareness throughout the cosmos. Human consciousness might be cosmic consciousness, exploring what it means to experience reality from localized perspectives while maintaining connection to universal information processing networks. This understanding transforms every aspect of human experience, from personal development to global challenges to our ultimate destiny as conscious beings in a conscious universe. The quantum mind theory suggests that we're standing at the threshold of discoveries that could reveal consciousness to be the primary creative force through which reality continuously evolves toward greater intelligence, beauty, and interconnection. The journey into quantum consciousness represents more than scientific investigation or spiritual exploration. It might be the universe's invitation to conscious beings who are ready to embrace their role as active participants in the ongoing miracle of cosmic evolution and reality creation itself. We're on the verge of something that could fundamentally rewrite everything we understand about human potential and our cosmic destiny. Because what researchers are discovering about the relationship between individual consciousness development and planetary evolution isn't just academically fascinating. It's revealing that we might be living through the most critical period in human history. Dr. Catherine Walsh at the Global Evolution Research Center has been tracking something that's sending shockwaves through evolutionary biology. She's documented evidence that human consciousness development isn't just changing individuals, it's literally altering the evolutionary trajectory of our entire planet. When she maps the locations of expanded consciousness development against global ecosystem recovery rates, the correlation is so precise it can't be coincidental. Regions with higher concentrations of consciousness-developed individuals show accelerated rates of biodiversity recovery, improved soil regeneration, and what can only be described as enhanced planetary healing. It's as if expanded human awareness is somehow communicating with Earth's biological systems and optimizing their natural restoration processes. But here's where it gets absolutely extraordinary. Walsh's team discovered that these consciousness ecosystem interactions operate through quantum field mechanisms that connect human awareness directly to what she calls the planetary consciousness network. Earth itself might be a conscious system that responds to the mental states of the life forms it supports. This planetary consciousness hypothesis gained unexpected support when researchers began studying the electromagnetic signatures generated by consciousness-developed individuals during focused intention practices. Dr. Michael Chen at the Tokyo Institute for Planetary Studies found that coherent human consciousness creates field patterns that match the natural electromagnetic rhythms generated by Earth's geological and biological systems. When groups of consciousness-trained individuals synchronize their awareness with these planetary rhythms, something remarkable happens. environmental monitoring stations detect immediate improvements in air quality, water purity, and ecosystem vitality that can't be explained by any conventional environmental mechanisms. The effect scales exponentially with the number of participants and their level of consciousness development. A single consciousness-trained individual can influence environmental conditions within a few square miles. A coordinated group of 50 can affect entire bioregions. The mathematical models suggest that a globally coordinated network of just a few thousand consciousness-developed individuals could potentially influence planetary environmental systems on continental scales. Dr. Elena Rodriguez began investigating whether these consciousness-environment interactions might represent preparation for an even more profound transformation. Her research reveals that human consciousness development isn't just affecting current environmental conditions, it's literally creating the conditions necessary for our species' next evolutionary leap. The quantum coherence fields generated by expanded consciousness appear to be activating dormant genetic potentials throughout human populations. Children born in areas with high consciousness field exposure show enhanced neural development, increased empathy and cooperation, and what researchers describe as natural access to expanded awareness states that previous generations required years of training to achieve. But the most remarkable discovery involves what's happening to human cognitive architecture itself. Brain scans of young people raised in consciousness-coherent environments reveal neural connectivity patterns that exceed anything documented in previous generations. They're developing what Dr. Rodriguez calls quantum brain networks that can interface directly with planetary and cosmic information systems. These quantum brain networks don't replace normal cognitive functions. They enhance them dramatically. Children with these enhanced neural architectures show remarkable abilities in creative problem-solving, pattern recognition across multiple domains simultaneously, and what appears to be direct access to information through quantum field interactions. But here's what's truly mind-bending. These enhanced cognitive capabilities appear to be contagious through mechanisms that operate beyond genetic inheritance. When children with quantum brain networks interact with peers who have conventional neural architectures, the enhanced connectivity patterns begin spreading to the other children within months. Dr. Patricia Henley's longitudinal studies reveal that this neural enhancement contagion is accelerating exponentially. Each generation shows greater percentages of children developing quantum brain networks, suggesting that humanity might be undergoing rapid cognitive evolution that could transform our species within just a few decades. The implications become staggering when we consider what these quantum-enhanced minds might be capable of achieving collectively. Current estimates suggest that even a small percentage of the population with fully developed quantum brain networks could solve challenges that have plagued human civilization for centuries. Climate restoration, sustainable energy systems, social harmony, technological advancement that serves collective well-being rather than individual profit. All of these seemingly intractable problems might become easily manageable from quantum consciousness perspectives that can access cosmic information databases and influence probability distributions through focused intention. But Dr. Amanda Foster's research reveals that actualizing these capabilities requires more than just individual development. The quantum brain networks appear to be designed for collective operation, with enhanced capabilities emerging only when multiple quantum-enhanced minds work together in coherent cooperation. This suggests that consciousness evolution isn't creating super individuals who can solve global problems single-handedly. Instead, it's developing a new type of collective intelligence that operates through networked quantum consciousness systems working in harmony toward shared goals. The transition to collective quantum consciousness doesn't eliminate individual identity or personal autonomy. Foster's research shows that people maintain their unique perspectives and creative contributions while gaining access to information processing capabilities that transcend individual limitations. Participants in collective quantum consciousness experiments report feeling more authentically themselves than ever before, as if accessing cosmic intelligence networks helps them discover aspects of their identity and potential that were previously hidden or underdeveloped. Recent studies by Dr. James Patterson reveal that these collective consciousness networks might already be forming spontaneously in communities around the world. Groups of consciousness-developed individuals are naturally organizing into what he calls quantum consciousness clusters that demonstrate problem-solving abilities far beyond what conventional teams can achieve. So here we stand, at the precipice of the most profound discovery in human history. The evidence is overwhelming, the implications staggering, and the invitation undeniable. Your consciousness isn't trapped inside your skull. It's connected to the very fabric of reality itself, part of a cosmic intelligence that spans from quantum particles to galactic superclusters. Every thought you think, every moment of awareness you experience, might be the universe discovering itself through your unique perspective. The quantum mind theory isn't just changing science, it's revealing that you're far more powerful, far more connected, and far more essential to cosmic evolution than you ever dared imagine. The question now isn't whether your brain is connected to the universe. The question is, what will you do with this extraordinary knowledge?